Okay, so today I wanted to cover the Pathfinder tool. I've already demonstrated it to you a little bit, but there are a series of videos that we'll watch on lynda.com that give a very detailed demonstration of how to use it. So let me create a new file to show you what I'm talking about if you're not familiar with it. It's not used that much. In fact, I can't even remember. I don't even know. There might be one exercise where they briefly mention it in the textbook, but I find it to be a very useful tool. And if you don't see it, it should be under Window, Pathfinder, and it will pop up. It allows you to take shapes, whether they be simple or complex, combine them, cut one from another, exclude parts, and so on and so forth. And there's also the last one down here, which allows you to divide. So these four at the top are useful, and the divide is also extremely useful. The rest of these are sort of worthless. So once again, let me show you the divide one first. So for example, if I were to take a square, and if I were to take a straight line like so, and let's say I wanted to divide this multiple times. Sorry for the cough. So I could take this, hold down the Option key, make a copy of it, and then hit Command D, right? Whoops, Command D. There we go. I guess I need to stretch this to make it a little bit, look a little bit more even. But you get the idea. I want to be able to fill each one of these stripes separately. Does that make sense? Right now, if I select this and I fill it, it fills the whole thing. I can't divide it separately. But to make each of these separate sometimes could take a little bit of work. Or maybe it's an unusual shape that you want to divide. Another way, I'll show you another way of doing this in a moment. But all I have to do is select all of these and select divide, and now notice what happens. They are separate shapes, and it creates them as a group first. So if I either ungroup or use group selection, I can select each one, and each one now can have a different color. They are separate shapes. That's a pretty nifty tool. So for example, another way of doing this that I did once for a project, I wanted to create a pyramid. So started with a triangle. Like so. And did pretty much the same thing, because I wanted it divided into multiple parts, and to make each of those shapes that perfectly fit with one another was kind of difficult. So it's easier to make the triangle first, then go ahead and just create a separate line, or I could even do it a little bit differently here. Let's take the rectangle tool like so and cross it like so. Okay, and then select both, and then select divide, and it divides them as a group. Now I can get rid of these outside parts by using the group selection tool and select each one of these individually, and I can fill them separately because they are separate parts. I use the divide tool. So that's a very quick, very efficient way to make complex shapes from simpler ones. But they don't have to be simple ones. They can be complex, and they can even become more complex. And if you recall, another example that I used were these here, that if you want to combine simple shapes to create something more complicated. So we start with a square, for example, and then maybe switch to and the ellipse tool. Okay, so like so, and they need to overlap. Make sure that they're both selected, Now I want to create another shape that's a combination of these two. I use this tool, which is the Add to Shape area. Now, this is a compound path right now. It's not a permanent change. If I want to go back, because it treats them as one, you'll see that the outline here is stroke. Okay, if I make the stroke bigger, oops, let's select it. Come on, where's the stroke? Stroke, stroke, stroke. There it is. Let's go ahead and see how the stroke goes around this. It doesn't, even though they're two separate shapes, the way they're configured, it doesn't complete a circle as it would before. But when you select it, you can see that it still sees it as two separate shapes just joined together temporarily. But then if you want, if you select the Expand tool, and this is true for all of these, it makes it a permanent change. So now I have a very complex shape. This would be much harder to create if I use the Pen tool than to overlap two of the basic shapes and combine them. What I can also do, for example, is let's select this shape here. Let's select the triangle again. What if I wanted to cut this wedge out of this shape? So select, the color doesn't matter. Select this one and this one, and whatever shape is in the foreground will be cut from the one in the background. So we use this one, subtract from shape area, and it cuts it away. Okay. And once again, this is a compound path, and as soon as I click Expand, it makes it permanent. Now, what if I want to subtract? Here's another idea that, for example, if I had a rectangle behind this, and let's change the color of it so we can see what we're doing here. Let's go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back. I could put a shape on top of this. Let's make sure that this is deselected. There we go. For example, let's put a star shape on top. And let's make the stroke none. So it looks like there's a hole in this magenta shape that goes back to the background, right? But in fact, if I were to move this out of the way, that shape stays there. They're just separate shapes layered on top of one another. A better way to work might be to select this shape and this one and also use the subtract, and then it cuts a hole through it. And then expand to make that a permanent selection, and now when I move this behind it, you can see that in fact it cut a hole through it. As far as I know, that's the only way you can do that, which is pretty cool. You can also take shapes and you can overlap them, as we're doing here. We have these other options that what we're going to do is wherever they're intersected is what will remain. See? Meaning wherever they overlap is what stays and the rest is cut away. Likewise, if I select the last one, it does just the opposite. Wherever they are overlapped, it goes away and it leaves the outside alone. This can be really effective too. You can create some really nice effects with this. And again, if you want to make this to be a permanent selection, then select Expand. If you don't, just go back, and undo it. So if we select both of these again, I do like so, and I expand, it's a permanent selection, permanent change. So this is what the Pathfinder tool does. Very, very effective for making very complex shapes, starting with simple ones. And in most cases, with the exception of this Divide tool, you can only use two shapes at a time. You can't select more than two for any one of these to work. The Divide tool is the only one that I know where you can select more than two and have it divide everything. But starting, two shapes, and then you either combine or subtract or divide, and then select another shape with those shapes, and you just keep building, building, building. Before you know it, you've got something very complicated without using the pen tool at all. And it's actually much easier, and it's probably more efficient than the pen tool. In fact, when we get to the lynda.com exercise in a moment, we'll touch on that. What I can show you, and this goes to the next assignment that I talked about before I turned on the videotape. Remember, you can do a very precise looking product. So let's go to my website and let's look at some of the products. Let's click. Taking a few moments to get here. Let's go to Kirk's classes and let's look at student samples or student artwork. There are quite a few product pieces on this particular page that are quite good. So once you complete the mask assignment, you have some choices. Here's an example of a product. Whoops, there we go. Lipstick case, or lipstick with case. Very nice. Here's, what is it? Sega game player. Here's turntable, all done in Illustrator. Let's go look at some others. Here's a car that was done in Illustrator. This is including the rims. It's not a photograph. Very nice. As far as I can remember, there was one portrait. This is the one that I have here. There are others that have been done. But this was a nice one, I thought. Very nice interpretation. He's a student of mine that also happened to be a DJ and used the live trace feature to take a photograph of himself and to convert it to vector graphics. Emphasis on the design of the shirt and just basically a black and white, strong contrast image of himself, and replicate that in the background. Some nice type that he added to it. Just a nice piece overall. Yeah, you have a choice to do the product, to do a portrait. Doesn't have to be a self-portrait, or to do the Toki Doki. To do the Toki Doki project is like this. In greater detail, though, if you go to my blog, there should be Murakami. Anybody go to the Murakami exhibit at the Geffen? Really beautiful. I mean, I think Murakami is way beyond what Simone does. But if we look at Simone Legno, so let's look at this article for a minute. And there was also, this one I can show you, not violate lynda.com copyright, but this was taken from a YouTube and I posted it. And here's a little article that I wrote on him. For a while they were showing freebie videos of inspirational interview with Simone, but I don't think they have it anymore. They've gone on to somebody else. But if you want to see examples of his work, we can watch here. So this would be your third choice. Let's just hope it doesn't take too long to start up and play. And if you do this, I want the illustration applied to either a t-shirt or a skateboard deck. And I have templates for those. I guess the third option would be a purse, but I forget whether or not I have a template for that or not. It just takes for a moment to load. At home it would load much quicker for all of us, but with everybody in the open lab using the computers, it tends to slow down. So he does designs for the sports sack. Those are the purses that he does. He does skateboard decks. He does a whole bunch of stuff. And these are the types of characters that he does. And he tends to do each of the characters separately, independent of one another. And then as he works on a particular project, uses them as library items and just starts to pull from all of these little characters that he's built and combines them together. I thought there was sound with this. Maybe not. It's okay. See, this is a good example at the very end of how busy his pieces become when he's almost done. This one. Come on. Let's play it again. See if I can get it to stop on just that one point so you can get a sense of the busy quality of his designs. You help, Nicholas? No, no luck. Won't allow me to go fast forward. Sorry for that. Ready, set, there. You can see where he takes a bunch of his characters and then puts them into one composition, but very busy. Now yours doesn't have to be that busy, and you don't have to design that many characters. But this one here is a really, really good example of one that was inspired by him, but he designed his own characters. Did a really nice job. So with that in mind, looking at this, I'll turn off the video and then we'll watch a series of videos using the tool that I just briefly demonstrated for you, the Pathfinder tool, but to do a complete illustration from start to finish. And it's a little robot that's very similar to this character here, using the Pathfinder tool to create something fairly complex, starting with very simple shapes. Okay, so let me hide this. Let me close this. Guess I need to bring it back up. Let's go back here. That's where I wanted to go. Okay, let me turn off the video because I'd be infringing on their copyrights if I were to record their video.